Hello there, welcome to this Slow News Day report on GW PLC. Professionally, I'm a portfolio manager, financial advisor, so I'm able to read a set of books. GW's annual report's out. I thought I'd go through it and just sort of show you what's going on. The half-year report is quite interesting as well. But anyway, all this channel's from the old world perspective. So, idiot, not old. Old world. So, where does it get a mention? Twice in the annual reports. So, now, how is a set of reports constructed? Right? What have we got? Well, who's the report written for? So Firstly, the report is written to comply with various regulations and guidelines. There's a lot of numbers in there that have to be in there. There's a lot of detail in there that essentially regulations say you have to publish, number one. Number two, games which have been addition are a PLC, which is a public limited company, and that means that it's limited by number of shares in existence, so that's the limitation. So they can't just issue or cancel shares willy-nilly. They can do it, but there's a process and it's quite difficult. It's legalistic. So that's the limited. Public, meaning that anybody can buy it, and company, meaning it's a company. It's a legal person. It's a legal entity. The company is its own legal personage, as it were. So they have to, because they're a PLC and because they're a public limited, there are further regulations. There's a lot more detail that they have to publish. So there's a lot of compliance work going on in these reports. But most importantly, actually, they're written for shareholders, because these are the people who are going to buy into the company. So they want to make a statement that says, buy our shares. They're good shares to hold. So if we look at the half-year reports, I don't think Old World will be mentioned in here. I shouldn't. Oh no, it was mentioned in the half-year report. That's interesting. Just the ones. So these statements at the beginning is basically, this is the bit where it says, dear shareholders or prospective shareholders, this is why you should buy us. So, there's some numbers there. Numbers in isolation are largely meaningless. If you're going to invest in a company, you're going to look at the pattern over time. What happens when good news hits them, what happens when bad news hits them, how volatile are they, how susceptible are they to reputational damage, how wide are their moats, as it were. Wide moats is like, could a competitor come along tomorrow and just basically disrupt them out of existence, all that kind of stuff. So if an investor's looking at investing in GW, they've done all that kind of background research, looking at patterns and, reputational risk, and how on top of the environmental stuff are they, i.e. is there a risk that in a few years the government has to significantly increase the environmental requirements on firms, and therefore firms are put as a tremendous cost in order to comply with those new requirements. So actually companies saying that we're ahead of this ESG stuff is good, because it reduces the risk of that kind of increased cost base at some point in the future. So here's some numbers. This is the half-year reports. I just wanted to quickly check them and maybe refer back to them in a bit, but they do mention the old world in the bit to shareholders, so they're kind of talking about their IP. That's the big bit, right? So these are the financial highlights. There's financial highlights, and then there's a load of statements. So you can see here from the contents, you've got the chair statement, got report. These are all kind of statements. Directors' responsibilities, that's a compliance statement. Company director and advisors, that's a list of like who their professional advisors are and who the directors are, which again they have to put in. Then there's an independent auditor's report, which is, because it's a PLC, so an independent auditor comes in and says, this company is a going concern, it's all fine and dandy, and we've prepared the reports in accordance with such and such and such and such. And then these are all the kind of, more or less all the kind of numbers, but in the notes as you can see, the notes take about 22 pages. So the notes, there's a lot of more detail in there. Not a massive amount of granularity, but there's more detail in there. So anyway, so these are the big numbers. These are the things that they want to highlight to us. And there's for details on the alternative performance measures used by the group. So we'll have a look at the glossary on page 86 briefly after this before returning. Anyway, so the news is that core revenue is up about £50 million a year, which is, pretty good. Earnings per share have therefore increased, so everybody who's a shareholder has increased earnings, and the dividends have gone up a little bit, but they've also gone down in percentage terms, which is interesting, because 415 over, that's earnings. I don't know what the value of the shares are at that date and that date. Actually, I don't think actually. I'm not sure whether they're allowed to say, are they? Yeah, I don't know whether. Sorry, when I said they've gone up I made a mistake there. For some reason, earnings per share got translated to share price in my head. Normally, because when you're researching a company, the dividend per share and the share price is next to each other on whatever research tool you're using. This isn't. I'm reading some books. Getting to that anyway. So anyway, profit before taxation is up by around about 30 million. So of that 50 million increase in turnover, they've managed to do that for essentially a 20 million increase in cost. So that's good. And cash before dividends paid, there's been a similar net increase. So again, everything, these books look pretty strong actually. Your core operating profits up, your licensing operating profits up. Now, I have heard people say in the past that the IP is all the money. It's not. Look, here are the figures, right? Right, the licensing operating profit is 29 million. That's what they've made, that's what they've made. At constant currency means that they've got some licensing profits that have been made in different currencies that have fluctuated against sterling. So this is just rebasing for currency valuation. So they've been quite good, and they said, well, this is the actual licensing operating profit in sterling, but actually, had it all been valued in sterling over the period, it would have been 29 million. But we've suffered a little bit from currency fluctuations. Anyway, all this looks pretty good. Revenue, core operating profits up, revenues up, everything's up, everything's go. Right. So then the chairman talks about blah 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 blah, wonderful company, blah blah blah, laser focused on talented, diverse, brilliant, everybody great, wonderful people, everybody, love everybody who works for GW because I'm the chair. And then the CEO says, oh, everybody who works here is great. We have some challenges occasionally, but generally everybody's great, wonderful, everything's brilliant, lovely, brilliant, fantastic, everything's great. Some challenges, brilliant, great. And that's pretty much the whole, all of this, just with more words that are appropriate to the setting of the company. Here we have, so essentially we have two main universes / settings, our dark, gritty fantasy sci-fi universe and our unique fantasy setting. Right. I mean, it is unique to an extent, but whatever. That includes Age of Sigmar, Blood Bowl, albeit a tongue-in-cheek parody, and Warhammer. Now, albeit a tongue-in-cheek parody, right? That's what they always put. I don't know why that. Maybe there's some of the Blood Bowl factions that are a bit kind of contentious and maybe a little bit non-PC, so they just want to make it clear that this isn't supposed to be this isn't even reality within our reality. It's kind of a fantasy within a fantasy almost. And Blood Bowl to an extent it's kind of a mix of WWF and American football and smaller team sports like handball and stuff like that. Anyway, they've mentioned the old world twice. Sales suggests it is appealing to both new and now. this word here in GW world is massive, because what they want more than anything is new people buying stuff. Because if somebody like me comes along and buys a little bit of Warhammer, I'm unlikely to buy a lot, right? Because, you know, I've already got loads of armies from loads of settings. I don't really need any more, you know, to continue to hobby. So, you know, me being interested in stuff is not a lot of money for them, to be honest. You know, I've already bought all my paints and hobby stuff and whatever, for instance. So I've already spent that. I've already got over that initial investment hurdle of probably a grand, couple of grand, that kind of thing. Possibly, well, I personally spent more than that, but maybe a grand or a couple of grand is like the initial cost hurdle. If they get a new hobbyist, they know they're going to get that like grand or so over the next year or two. Whereas veteran hobbyists don't pay as well. So the fact that they think the old world is appealing to new, whether it is or not, is, you know, not really relevant. They think it does, so that's all that matters. So that means that, as with everything we do, we have grand plans for the years ahead. So that means we're going to do quite a bit more old world. So that's pretty good. Right, there were a few. Was it page 86? Looking at the KPIs in the glossary. Alternative, what was it? 86. It was like, was it that? 86 alternative performance measures. I thought it was 86. I thought it was on. Okay. Alternative performance measures. So this is what they're interested in. So they want to grow. So the core revenue, core gross profit, core operating expenses, operating profit, licensing revenue, licensing gross profit, licensing operating expenses. It's really interesting that they're separating out licensing from like the core. So like they see licensing as like an additional thing, like it's not the main thing. Like I think, well, again, people have said that the IP is where they make all their money, and it's like it's not really. It's a tiny amount. Like licensing expanded by, what was it, like 10 million last year, whereas actual core profit expanded by, what was it, 30, something like that. So like, you know, they've not really made a lot from the licensing anyway, you know. And again, that's because they don't have like a product that they can like point to and say, you know, do you want to buy more of this? So for instance, I think what they'd be really interested in doing is something like, you know, like Marvel did really, and create this kind of a massive amount of content, this multiversal content, and get some films going and so on and so forth. And, you know, I think they've been quite clever in holding off doing anything live action until there's enough scale to do something really big. And I really hope that's what they're doing, because like all the cartoons and stuff that they do for premium members is Warhammer Plus. All the content they do for that is pretty. It's not the best, is it? I mean, it's some interesting storylines, and it's nice to see like the characters that you know I've grown up with sort of fleshed out a little bit, but it's not that good, is it? I mean, you know, we can all look at it, and it hasn't really taken off, I think, in the way they intended it to. Even though Warhammer Plus members are have increased quite significantly. Yeah, here we go. So the subscribe. Oh, it's Warhammer Plus. They've put an actual plus. Will remain an integral part of our digital offer. So they're going to keep doing it. They had 136,000 members at the end of last year, so they've got an extra 40,000 members. at the end of this year, which, 40,000 times, what is it, 60 quid, that's 2.4 million quid is what they've earned extra through Warhammer. Again, it's not that much, but that's the other thing to remember is that's not all profit, but it's almost all profit. I mean, they'll have had to expand the storage and the amount of access points that people can simultaneously access the content before it starts to sort of slow down, and so they've had to increase the bandwidth of supply. They've also so there will be some small, but these are very small costs. It's more or less all it's about 90% profit. So that's all good. So they're going to keep doing it because they just made an extra 10% of their profit base roughly last year came through Warhammer Plus. So profit increase came through Warhammer Plus, so they're going to keep doing that, obviously. Subscriber numbers of emails are up. My Warhammer active users are more. This is an interesting stat. So actually, I wonder what the percentages are. I should have worked that out. So they had subscribers of 136 over 427. So 32% of members were subscribed last year, and this year it's 176 over 565. That's 31%. That's interesting. So there's been more people signing up to use My Warhammer, which is basically the online login, so that it saves your cart and all the rest, than have signed up to Warhammer Plus. But it's still a pretty steady. Pretty steady increase. I wish they put a little table in there that sort of went through what these were percentages of in terms of this. That would be quite interesting, actually. But it seems they've got more people signing up to stuff online, just fewer people actually paying for the online offering. And that will be a mixture of people just not taking it up. But I'd imagine, because subscriber numbers haven't gone down, so I'd imagine actually the reason for the decrease is people decommissioning, if that makes sense. So you'd have thought that essentially the increased 40,000, it would be 32%, so it would be a similar percentage of them would have picked up, but then a few thousand existing subscribers have gone, what's the point of this? That's what I reckon. But anyway, that's just my opinion. It would be interesting for them to actually publish that data so we could find that out, really, but it's up to them. So that's subscriber numbers. Where's the now, one thing I wanted to look at was, is this trade retail online? No. Is that the... That might... they should trade we sell to third-party independent... Yeah, so trade is independent retailers. Yeah, sorry, no, this is exactly what I wanted to point out. Independent retailers are massively important for GW. It's... Last year it was 56% of the revenue. This year it's increased to 58% of the revenue is from trade customers. So the independent stores, their stores make 20. Yeah, they make 120 million quid a year across their stores. However, they make nearly 300 million by selling Warhammer to other people, so other trade sellers who are then going to resell it, which is an astronomical amount of money, And these people often trade at much lower margins than Games Workshop do. However, they kind of also trade at a different scale. So it's most of the independent retailers are much bigger than an individual GW store, if they've got an online cart, that is. However, they are, but they're much smaller than, say, Lenton or any of the international distribution ports. And then also there's loads and loads of stores. They increased their number of trade sellers by another 700 accounts. Net number, so that's just 700 more. That's those cancelling less. So I mean, you know, that's a huge amount of the business, a huge amount of the business. And the licensing revenue, they break that down for us here as well, which is really interesting. 70% games, 15% mobile, and 15% other. So like, you know, so 15%, right, of 30 million quid. You know, it's not a lot, is it? So they've been paid a few million quid by Amazon for what? Something? Maybe? I don't know. So, but anyway, so the licensing revenue, 32 million quid. If we go back up to cost them 5. So the profit margin on licensing is massive, but it's not entirely without cost. But that basically means, yeah, because that's computer games. So that basically means they've spent 5 million quid developing some or selling the IP to these computer games. They're not actually getting much per game, really, are they? You think like Space Marine 2 comes out this year, and you'd have thought they'd have, you know. So they're not actually investing in developing anything, are they? Like literally, the licensing is just. But no, they must be developing some of it because. Like, you can't spend 5 million quid on a team of people just trying to sell IP. Like, I suppose if they've got really expensive lawyers, that could be like the legal fees to review all the IP contracts. Could be that, actually. IP lawyers are quite expensive if they're good. So, yeah, it could be. It could be a lot of legal fees in that. That's interesting. Operating blah blah blah, investments in staff. They've literally just given everybody a pay rise, which is, you know, increasing costs are professional fees and marketing spend. Yet you want to keep professional fees to like a minimum because, you know, there's a sort of an argument, and this might be, you know, a new tax policy in future, but there's sort of an argument that you shouldn't professional fees shouldn't be deductible from turnover for tax purposes. It's a pretty weak argument, but you know, there is this argument. So like, you want to keep professional fees down as low as possible. There's loads and loads of stuff here. The CEO Kevin Roundtree got paid 1.8 million. By the way, last year. So they're good payers in terms of the executive board. I mean, you know, I'd do it for 10% of that. But hey, no, I wouldn't actually. No, that's not true at all. That's a total lie. Maybe about 35%. There's some notes here. Where's the other one that I wanted to find? There's a bit better breakdown of this other than that summary. Is it? Can I find it? I don't think I've probably lost it now. Yeah, it's not going to be anywhere down here, is it? No. But anyway, the point is that trade sales are the majority of their sales. So Games Workshop are still massively reliant on everybody else and becoming increasingly reliant on all the trade sellers. So that's pretty good. The trade sellers are concentrated across basically North America and the UK and Europe. Basically, there's a bit elsewhere, but it's not surprising really, because it's a franchise that really does appeal to, like, you know, white Anglo-Saxon type guys in general. That is their sort of customer base pretty much. I mean, it's obviously not universal. Other sort of cultural groups exist that are very interested in Warhammer. However, historically and predominantly, it's that kind of demographic that are interested in it at the moment. But I know they're trying to appeal to wider markets, like especially with Total War, you know. And I think that's one of the things that they're hoping about the old world, that it will capture people who just played Warhammer Total War, because there's loads of them. but capture them and get them to play the tabletop version, or at least buy a few minis and paint up their favourite characters or that kind of thing. So, there's a lot of potential for the old world to be bigger than even 40k actually. But yeah, getting like computer gamers to become like real physical gamers is quite challenging. But it's not doable. The thing is, if they're going to do it, they need gaming centres, so they need places that people can go and come and have a game. And the problem that GW have with their stores is they've taken the focus away from gaming. So getting people to stop playing computer games and start playing like tabletop games means you've got to demo that, right? People go, they demo the computer games that they want to buy. So you need to be able to demo that with an actual... So actually you need much more gaming space, and that doesn't mean making the tables smaller and the game sizes smaller. No. What that means is bigger stores that have a full table on, so people can sit and play a full game and sort of dip in and out of it. Do you know what I mean? That's what you need to be doing. Stores like, if you're ever in Lincolnshire, not in Lincoln, Cambridgeshire, there's the Peterborough store, which I think is the longest standing GW at a single site. Just go in there. They've put the silly little tables in now because they've had to, but in its heyday, that was a great store because it had enough space for like 5 or 6 before tables in it, loads and loads of racks all around the room. It's a really nice store. It's a really decent size. So it can act as like a small... That's the kind of property that they should be hunting out for. The town that I live in, Boston, has a store. Great store manager, lovely guy. But the store is very suboptimal. Incredibly suboptimal. It's kind of the actual property that it's in is what I mean is suboptimal. It's a very annoying shape, and like, you just think surely they must be able to afford something. There's loads of retail property up for rent in Boston. Surely they must be able to afford something better. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know. But if you had a little bit more space, so you could stick out some gaming tables, so people could come along and have a game on like a decent sized table and have a full size game, or maybe like 2 or 3 people there booking tables, and you could charge rent to book a table, so you could come into the store and have a game. So you don't have to charge a lot, like £1.50 for like a morning or an afternoon or an evening session or whatever. So give people like a 3-hour slot or whatever to they pay £1.50, or £4 for the whole day, or do you know what I mean? You could have a booking system, and it wouldn't be particularly difficult to do that. Like loads of table booking systems exist. Like it's how restaurants operate nowadays. So it's not you don't even have to invent one yourself. You just buy a plug-in for your website. But it's I'm going off on one now, but the point is you need to get more gaming happening rather than... I know that's not the current retail strategy, but what I'm saying is I think Games Workshop are wrong with that current retail strategy. I think is wrong, because if you want to get people coming from playing games on their computers to playing games in a store, that strategy is wrong, because you need to get them actually playing the game, and then they'll buy the stuff so that they can play the game, right? And then at some point they might find that they really like doing the modelling, or they might find they really like doing the painting, or both, or whatever, and then they get more into that. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So these are the strategic objectives. So they have let me go through our strategy part by part. The first element is that we make high quality miniatures. So to recruit and retain customers, we are absolutely focused on making our models the best in the world. We sell our miniatures for a price that we believe represents the investment in their quality. Yeah, okay. The second element is we make fantasy miniatures based on our endless imaginary world. This gives us control over imagery, blah, 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 blah. Third, we are constantly looking to grow our licensing income from opportunities to use our IP in other markets. What? That's such a dumb corporate thing. We're looking at Chinese fish markets at the moment. We wonder how we can like 40k line caught bream. I think is line caught space bream. Oh God. I hate corporate talk. Marketing, I just find very annoying. It's like, just be honest, please. No, you're just going to... Okay. I'm not saying that these are like lie, but marketing, there's a lot of like hyperbole and nonsense that you got to work your way through to get to the truth of what they're actually telling you. Like, what do they mean in other markets? Like, they're already in quite a lot of different markets. Do they mean to expand what's happening in the other markets that they're already in? So are they defining stuff like what we're doing with Amazon as other markets? Is that already part? Or are they looking somewhere else to do something else? Like, they've done the models, the big models with, I can't remember who makes them. And then they've done like chibi stuff and all that kind of stuff. So what does that actually mean, Kevin? Is this from Kevin? Strategic report is probably his. Third element is that we're customer focused. We aim to communicate in an open, fun way, whoever and wherever our customers are, and in whichever way they want to engage with Warhammer, we will do our utmost to support them. Now, notably, not if they hold far right views. That's something that they've said that they don't like. Far left seems to be fine, but far right views, those people they don't want in the hobby. In a fun way, they don't want them in the hobby. Now, personally, I don't want any real world politics in the hobby. Thank you very much. The whole point of a parody or a pastiche or a fictional setting is to create a world that kind of asks you the same sort of questions but indirectly. So, you don't need space Nazis because you have Black Templars, right? Who are like the most fervent, radical, evil of all the Space Marine chapters. I'd say are probably the Black Templars. There are some really, really tough contenders for that. Like Dark Angels, their initiation process is horrendous. Like how they find applicants. Anyway, but out of all the factions in terms of the day-to-day operation, Black Templars are probably the most evil, genocidal, horrendous chapter. And they ask that question, like, the nature of your relationship with what could your relationship be. Like, if you think about it in terms of the lore, not in terms of the tabletop game, because I think Black Templar miniatures are lovely. I absolutely adore the models, but I know their connotation, and the answer to me is I don't think I can associate with that, so I don't collect that. Like, I don't think I could although they're great, and Grand Marshal Helbrecht is like one of the best 40k models they've done. However, in my opinion, that is, I've had weird opinions, but I don't think I could buy a chapter because I don't think that's not really the sort of, it's not the sort of crusade to sort of purify a whatever. Bretonnians on crusade is different because they're out to purify some lands or destroy the undead or whatever. It's not like real world crusades that are out to proselytize and murder and rape and pillage. Anyway, the whole point is that you've got these kind of parodies of of the real world in the game of the hobby that allows you to kind of conduct those thought experiments and have that kind of philosophical interaction with something without it being obvious, or without it being like directly asking the question. And I think that's one of the great things about any kind of element of fantasy, is that it does ask those kind of really, really important questions without actually asking the question. It's so clever. It's like, Star Trek of old used to be really, really good at this, just asking those questions, but obliquely. So you weren't actually confronted with the naked reality of this being an issue in Earth. It just asks you to think about this thing that we all know what you talk. Anybody with half a brain knows what it's a parody of, or what it's asking you to think about. But like, it allows you to do it without being fettered by, the footballification of politics nowadays. So, that's I I wish they'd be more inclusive and just try to like not re-educate. I don't like that terminology either. I find that worrying terminology. But like, not to provide people with information such that they then agree with you, but provide people with information such that they can, if somebody does choose to believe and support a kind of an extreme ideology on either side, I don't care. Like, both extremes are equally worrying to me. But if somebody decides to pursue an extreme ideology, I'd hope that they are doing so autonomously. And by doing so autonomously, I mean that they've really, really considered everything that comes along with that and everything that they're saying as part of that extreme ideology. Have they really thought it all through? And if they have really thought it all through and they feel that's still the right thing for them, then fair enough. I'm going to vehemently object and oppose them. But, that they have... I'd like, so in terms of like what I mean by educating people is, well, actually, is that decision autonomous, or is it they've just swallowed a load of lies from somebody that they quite like? Which, often extreme political ideologies are led by demagogues who have autonomously decided that's the right way for them, and they can be, not tend to be, I don't know about tend to be, but they can be quite charismatic and take a lot of people along with them, and they tend to lie to get people to support their position. So, do people really understand what they're getting themselves into, or should they just, chill out for a few months and then have a think about it, and then maybe not go back to the church of whatever, or the temple of, Cthulhu, or, because, like, if you were a Cthulhu worshipping cultist, right, or if you are at the moment, then Cthulhu relay. No, that's not what I meant. No, cut that bit. Anyway, so yeah, we want to be inclusive, and we want to get loads of different opinions around the table, and we want to have people interact with it. My worry is that they try to dumb it down or tone it down in future. And one of the really cool things about Warhammer is the way that it just attacks everything. Like, it attacks institutions, but really in a very artistic and oblique and kind of tongue-in-cheek fashion. It's very, very... I love the way that, like, go and look at the history of the Rainbow Warriors, like where they actually came from. Which is a 40k chapter, which is really, really interesting, like political, satirical history. It's brilliant. There's a lot of really cool stuff in Warhammer's, like, the genesis of chapters and stuff. So, like, I'd definitely go and look at that. There's a lot of stuff that they did in the 80s and the 90s, which is very kind of protesty, sort of quite cool. But, yeah, be more inclusive, but I'd say for everybody, really. Like, whether you disagree with them or not. Like, I have opinions. I know my opinions are basically worthless. Other people have opinions. Those opinions are also basically worthless. Like, everybody's entitled to opinions, obviously, because they're not really worth anything. So, anyway, I'm talking about a set of books, and I'm going very deep into the philosophy of the IP. But I just think that it's really important that although they do make fantastic models, and they have done for ages, like, like like these Chaos Warriors, these new ones are absolutely bloody marvellous. I absolutely love them. And these, like, Jason and the Argonaut skeleton things. They're just like, they're so good, like absolutely brilliant. But then again, like even some older stuff, like these Ushabti guys. The models are absolutely wonderful. Like they're just fantastic. Um, so yeah, they have got that, but they've also got this IP that ties it all together, and they've got to be really careful to like preserve it as much as possible, and not mess about with stuff too much, because it does matter to people and it matters to their customers. And yeah, I know that existing customers don't give them that much money, but with the sort of directly, but the existing customers do give them a lot of money indirectly, because they're the ones who get their friends into it, right? They're the ones who do the most of the recruitment. So you got to look after your existing customers, because then if you get rid of them, you're not going to get any new customers, right? That's what happened with Marvel. That's why Marvel's multiverse really took off, because some people watched, e.g. Iron Man, and thought, this is fantastic, I'm going to get my friends to come and watch the next Marvel film, or I'll get them to come and watch Iron Man, and then we can all be Marvel fans, and then blah 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 blah, and then Endgame, Infinity War, I really like Captain blah blah blah, Hulk, and then the whole thing built to a crescendo around Infinity War, and then they cocked it up. Firstly, because they introduced the multiverse and time travel, which I think is a lazy device, and very difficult to manage, and people don't really understand time travel. It's really difficult to sort of develop a universe with that in. But not only that, they did other things that gradually just diminished, and so essentially they annoyed the existing fan base by taking all the cool stuff away from them, all the stuff that they liked. They got rid of them and tried to appeal to this new market, and the old market is gone pretty much, and the new market isn't very big, they found out, and they would have been much better just appealing to their existing customers to get them to come back again and again and again, and just keep building it. So what Games Workshop have done over the last 30 years, from the 80s to now, is that kind of initial phase. And I genuinely feel like GW's kind of could be at any stage going to do what Marvel did and just bugger everything up. And the main reason for my concern is that, well, just look around. Like, look at the amount of corporations that are gradually doing stuff that annoys their existing fan base because they want this new hip and trendy generation of people. The problem is that new hip and trendy generation of people aren't really that fussed in the same things as. So do you know what I mean? I think anyway. I don't know. That's not in here. Actually, I'm talking about this. The fourth element is global nature. Customers can be found anywhere, and we seek them out all over the world. Passionate bunch. Yeah, they're all deeply invested in the rich characters and settings of IP. I'm glad they actually say that, and this is like really comforting, because they recognise that fans are deeply invested. That's a very strong turn of phrase. You don't tend to find like this kind of. I know this is, dear investors, our customers are all incredibly loyal, so you could think that they might take it for granted. Now, either they're going to take our support for granted, and that if they do ruin everything, we're not going to wander off to other game systems like tomorrow, because high quality miniatures, right? That might be a thing that they're trying to message here. I mean, and in actual fact, they might be right. That might be true. But, and then they talk about the financial thing, focus on cash, and cash a business being able to be cash generative is a great thing from an investor's perspective. So everybody says that they have a focus on cash. Like, they don't mean like cash as in notes. They mean cash as in like, liquid money. We like to have lots of money in our various bank accounts sort of sloshing around. Because then everything just works smoothly. We don't have to find money or borrow it, and we don't have to employ people to deal with the debt side, which is fair enough. Our product is distributed from a warehouse, EMG, approximately 25 minutes away from our HQ in Nottingham. EMG supplies our 2 hubs in Memphis and Sydney, Australia. So they have a big distribution warehouse in I wonder if East Midlands. Oh, do they mean? Oh, right, okay, idiot. That's pretty obvious, isn't it? Now I think about it. So they're right next to. There we go. In fact, it's found it. It's there. So there's East Midlands Airport. There's GW's distribution centre. So they've got a big shed there. And there's an Amazon depot going up there as well. Or it probably already is up, actually. But yeah, we've got all of these kind of Amazon, EMA. Oh, Amazon's going for another one. So they've got all of this stuff here. So yeah, so they can supply the world from this little thing near Castle Donington, this East Midlands Airport. They say approximately 25 minutes from our Lenton. That's not true at all. It takes way more than 25 minutes. Or does it actually? No, because I'm thinking about driving, because I normally go for like hotel. It's about here if I'm staying there. There's a nice hotel there. There's also a nice hotel in there as well. But sorry, not grunting. Why am I so world? 21 minutes it reckons. Okay, maybe. Yeah. EMG supplies our 2 hubs, one in Memphis, one in Sydney, blah blah blah. Was there anything in the numbers I wanted to look at? Was it about here? Yeah, they got more staff, but not much more staff is the important thing. Proportionately, they've had more cost increase to pay rises than just increasing staff numbers. So all of that increase in cost hasn't been pay rises; it's been on employing more people. Yeah, they spent 20 million extra on salaries, 19-ish. And they recruited another 200 staff. So if those 200 staff are on, let's say, 40 grand each, that would be 8 million. You know, and 40 grand's a lot of pay in the UK as like an average. I wonder if they actually say what the average salary is. They might do somewhere, but probably not. Oh, that if it's anywhere, that'll be in the remuneration section. So there's normally a bit in the notes that's about remuneration and staff. I mean, that's the staff numbers. No, that is the section, idiot. That's the section you were bloody looking at, you moron. Of course it was. Yeah, so I don't think there's going to be any like average. Income or translated the average rate. What's the average full-time equivalent number? Yeah, they're just telling you what the yeah, so last year they made a pay increase was averaged 5% across all staff. Okay, well that's fair enough. That's slightly ahead of. In fact, I think they meant 5.8%. So yeah, so they're paying their staff more, which is good because the staff do need pay more. They don't get paid an awful lot, to be honest. They do need to value the IP, but in terms of like it all stems from looking after that really. Making cool models, they can do that, but they'll be able to sell the models, just by making cool models and adopting other rule systems. Like, I'm pretty certain if they did GW, or they just adopted a rule set for a different system and just made models for that different system, like, they'd still make as much money. It's just they own the rule system, so they can do these like launches every now and again, which are massive marketing exercises. But like, I think they could do the same just by launching like new ranges of models, for instance, or new models or whatever. Especially if they did like some limited run, limited edition stuff, that would be pretty cool, and they make tons of money doing that. Because then you would actually get FOMO from it, and there would be collector's pieces that would instantly increase in value on eBay. I suppose it depends how limited these limited edition runs were, but they could do that if they wanted to really tap into the whole FOMO thing. I'd definitely get multiple, because I'd want to actually build one, and I want to keep one just for later investment. But don't admit that on camera. But yeah, so these are the accounts, the books, and Dan's view on politics. But they have been. Oh, the word political is in here. Where? Oh, that's interesting. Does not make any donations to charities or political parties, but we allow staff to take 2 working days, so they get paid to work for charities for 2 days a year. That's pretty decent, actually. That's nice of them. Yeah. And then there's some stuff about the environmental stuff that they're they're ahead of it, basically. It's but like I said, every company will be trying to say they're ahead of it, because reduces the sort of a long tail risk of reduced profit in the future. However, the company's more profitable. This came out a few. Share price. Let's just have a quick look over the month. When did the annual statements come out? Was it I can't remember when they were published. It was recent. Annual report. No, it wasn't published on the 5th of June, was it? I thought they were published more recently than that. GW final report. Very sure, thank you. It doesn't say when they published it, for crying out loud. Where's the bloody... I thought they had like little... Right, so there was an article there that said strong cash flows undervalued. Did it? I'm pretty certain it came out like last week sometime. So it's interesting. So after that, and this dividend declaration on the 8th of August, which is it won't let me click on it. I don't know what that was. Okay, so there's a dividend declaration. Maybe it came out then, 8th of August, when the dividends were declared. I know it's been very recent, so so the share prices have not pretty much, even if it was before that little dip, have pretty much not reacted. So yeah, that's the annual reports. I mean, I doubt anybody's still watching because it's quite boring. Well, even I'm getting bored. I mean, I'm not going to make a recommendation to buy or sell. I'm not a stockbroker. I don't carry PI insurance. So I'm not going to do that. But, profit's up, turnover's up. staff costs are up. They seem to at least understand the strengths of their business. So, you know, whether they really understand that or not. From an old world perspective, it looks like they're going to support it and throw more into it, which I'm really glad to see. Hopefully that means we get more than one faction a quarter. That would be good if we had one every 2 months. If they could ramp up production on the old world factions, that would be great. You know, even if that means not all the models get released as a like oneer when that faction gets released, if they wanted to do like a staged release with models, I'd be all in support of that. But that would obviously, if they've already got something in that what they'll probably do is just essentially shrink the time scales for doing everything. If that's what they're going to do, they're not going to like start releasing models for some factions in between another, because it doesn't lead to a clean marketing message. So you want to do all your dwarf stuff and get people out doing dwarves, and then launch your next thing and then get people out doing all that. And also, it's a valid strategy, because like with Khemri, you know, they've released Khemri. Well, they straight no Bretonians were straight away. They released Khemri second, and in the last quarter, I've bought and paint a 2K Khemri list. So you know they could, if that's their strategy, and they've got idiots like me who do that sort of thing. I'll probably have a 2K dwarf list by the time the next faction drops. But hey, that's that. Okay, so thanks for watching. If you have, if you've liked the video, you know, like the video. If you're still watching, you should probably subscribe, right? Unless you spent the last hour ranting at me, which is fine. Make a comment. I respond to all comments up until now, anyway. Anyway, toodaloo.